The annual Conservative Convention of Turning Point USA has made headlines for exposing cracks in cohesion of the political right. The four-day AmericaFest in Phoenix was Turning Point USA's first since its leader, Charlie Kirk, was shot dead on a college campus in Utah in September. His widow, Erica, even joked that the convention felt like Thanksgiving dinner where your family is hashing out the family business. There were debates about whether the movement should exclude figures such as Fuentes. J.D. Vance came down firmly against purity tests. After those debates, J.D. Vance, who is Donald Trump's heir apparent, came down firmly.
And when I say that I'm going to fight alongside of you, I mean all of you, each and every one. President Trump did not build the greatest coalition in politics by running his supporters through endless, self-defeating purity tests. I didn't bring a list of conservatives to denounce or to deplatform.
The conservative movement is also in danger from charlatans who claim to speak in the name of principle, but actually traffic in conspiracism and dishonesty, who offer nothing but bile and despair, who seek to undermine fundamental principles of conservatism by championing enervation and grievance. These people are frauds, and they are grifters, and they do not deserve your time.
Well, for more analysis on this story, we can bring in Richard Johnson, who's a lecturer in US politics at Queen Mary University of London. Thank you very much for being with us on France 24. We heard there two competing visions outlined by J.D. Vance and Ben Shapiro, who's a conservative commentator. What do you make of this? Is the rift really just about how far the political right can stretch, or is there more to it?
Well, I think fundamentally this was the start of the J.D. Vance for President campaign. And indeed, as was mentioned, Erica, the widow of Charlie Kirk, endorsed Vance for the presidency, which obviously it's a very long way away, but American political campaigns have a very long lifespan. And the challengers to Vance, it seems, will not emerge from the more moderate wing to the left of Vance, but will emerge further to the right of Vance. And so Vance made a decision at the Turning Point conference to not try to put off those challengers from the right, but to say, you can vote for me. I am on your side. I am not here to look for heretics. So he's taking a sort of broad tent approach to his candidacy, which I think is probably from a strategic standpoint, probably the right thing for him to do. From a moral standpoint, that's a different question, because some of these figures, such as Nick Fuentes, and indeed even Tucker Carlson today, have become very, very unsavory in the kinds of messages that they're putting out there.
Does that mean the sort of conspiracy theorist camp is likely to be more accepted or alienated?
I think they're going to become more accepted. I think they're going to become a bigger part of Republican politics. It was interesting, Susie Wild, Donald Trump's chief of staff, gave an interview with Vanity Fair where she was talking about the new voters who entered the Trump coalition in 2024. And she saw those voters as the kind of younger, male, online voters, the sort of people who are following and listening to these podcasts like Fuentes and others on the further right of party politics. And her question really was, can those people be brought into the MAGA mainstream? And it's quite extraordinary to think where we are. I mean, 10 years ago, if we were talking about the MAGA mainstream, or think MAGA is the mainstream of the Republican Party, people would put a big question mark over that. But that's really now, that's the mainstream. And the question is, can these people on the fringes be brought in, or are they going to pull MAGA even further to the right on these questions of basically, racial supremacy for white Americans? And also, very interestingly, there's a huge fissure that's emerging over Israel. And some of that is very unfortunately intertwined with anti-Semitic conspiracy theories that are coming out from some of those figures on the further right.
Well, let's talk about the issue of Israel then, and also the support that Washington gives to it. Some have questioned whether this policy aligns with Trump's America First platform. Do you think that's likely to be a point of contention going forward?
Look, there's a legitimate debate to be had about the US alliance with Israel, whether the United States is acting in its own strategic interests or in wider global security interests by providing or selling military equipment to Israel, providing aid and other military or diplomatic support to Israel. Those are all legitimate debates to be had, and they can be had across the political spectrum in the United States. The problem is, and what I was alluding to earlier, is that there then enters into a conspiracy that you see, to be honest, on the fringes of both the right and the left in American politics, which is that there is some kind of secretive cabal, a Jewish cabal or a Christian Zionist cabal that is pulling the strings, and that is where people, some people on the right, have tried to say, actually, we draw a line there in the discussion, and there are others who, like Tucker Carlson, have become very interested in this line and are pursuing that line. And this is where it becomes very tricky for J.D. Vance, because I think ultimately he doesn't want to give credibility to those conspiracy theories, but he also doesn't want to put off people who do have, legitimate questions about foreign policy decision making. And at the moment, and I think where he's going to be, and we could see this with the Turning Point conference, is he's going to try to keep himself somewhat above the fray on these debates for the time being. I don't think he doesn't want to take a clear side insofar as he can avoid it, but it's going to be a very difficult thread for him to push through the needle.
And do you think there's anything else on the horizon that could create more schisms in the political right going forward?
Well, I think there will be divisions over performance of the Trump administration, and there will be questions about whether the Trump administration has done enough to improve living standards for ordinary Americans. Ultimately, the condition of the economy is going to be a major factor in how Americans vote, both in the midterm elections this upcoming year and in the presidential election in 2028. A more proximate issue, one that you were talking about earlier in your program, is the issue of Venezuela. And there are divisions on the American right about whether the United States should be involved in regime change, basically, in South America, or whether this is something that the United States should not be getting itself involved in. If there's some discussion, if there's change of government in Venezuela that's been pushed by American activities, then will there be something similar that happens in Cuba? These are things that perhaps more traditional right-wing Americans, the kind of George W. Bush wing of the party, would have been quite interested and open to. Trump had historically disassociated himself with that kind of neoconservatism, but now he's leaning into it, and that is causing disquiet and upset on the right. So I think there'll be more foreign policy disagreements in the weeks and months ahead.
All right, Richard Johnson from Queen Mary University of London, thank you very much for your analysis.
Thank you.